Well, hello everyone. My name is Dar Rath and I'm the pastor at Faith Lutheran Church in Port Elgin, Ontario, Canada. Each week I bring you a story, and this story this week is from a book by Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Vanson, Amy Newark, and forwarded by Heidi Krupp. And the story in here is called All the Good Things. And it is written by Helen Mrozla. He was in the third grade class I taught at St. Mary's School in Morrison, Minnesota. All 34 of my students were dear to me, but Mark Eklund was one in a million. Very neat in appearance, he had that happy to be alive attitude that made even his occasional mischievousness delight. Mark also talked necessarily. I tried to remind him again and again that talking without permission was not acceptable. What impressed me so much, though, was the sincere response every time I had to correct him for misbehaving. "Thank you for correcting me, sister." I didn't know what to make of it at first, but before long I became accustomed to hearing it many times a day. One morning my patience was growing thin when Mark talked once too often. I made a novice teacher's mistake. I looked at Mark and said, "If you say one more word, I'm going to tape your mouth shut." It wasn't 10 seconds later when Chuck blurted out, "Mark is talking again." I hadn't asked any of the students to help me watch Mark, but since I had stated the punishment in front of the class, I had to act. I remember the scene as it had occurred this morning. I walked to my desk very deliberately, opened the drawer, and took out a roll of masking tape. Without saying a word, I proceeded to Mark's desk, tore off 2 pieces of tape, and made a big X with them over his mouth. I then returned to the front of the room. As I glanced at Mark to see how he was doing, he winked at me. That did it. I started laughing. The entire class cheered as I walked back to Mark's desk, removed the tape, and shrugged my shoulders. His first words were, "Thank you for correcting me, sister." At the end of the year, I was asked to teach junior high math. The years flew by, and before I knew it, Mark was in my classroom again. He was more handsome than ever and just as polite. Since he had to listen carefully to my instruction in the new math, he did not talk as much in the 9th grade. On Friday, things just didn't feel right. We had worked hard on a new concept all week, and I sensed that the students were growing frustrated with themselves and edgy with one another. I had to stop this crankiness before it got out of hand, so I asked them to list the names of other students in the room on 2 sheets of paper, leaving a space between each name. Then I told them to think of the nicest thing they could say about each of their classmates and write it down. It took the remainder of the class period to finish the assignment, but as the students left the room, each one handed me their paper. Chuck smiled. Mark said, "Thank you for teaching me, sister. Have a good weekend." That Saturday, I wrote down the name of each student on a separate sheet of paper and enlisted what everyone else had said about that individual. On Monday, I gave each student his or her list. Some of them ran for 2 pages. Before long, the entire class was smiling. "Really?" I heard whispered. I never knew that meant anything to anyone. I didn't know others liked me so much. The group of students moved on. Several years later, after I had returned from a vacation, my parents met me at the airport. As we were driving home, Mother asked the usual question about the trip. How the weather was, how my experiences was in general. There was a slight lull in the conversation. Mother gave Dad a sideways glance and simply said, "Dad?" My father cleared his throat. "The Eklunds called last night." "Really? I haven't heard from them for several years. I wonder how Mark is." Dad responded quietly, "Mark was killed in the war. The funeral is tomorrow, and his parents would like it if you could attend." I had never seen a serviceman in a military coffin before. Mark looked so handsome and so mature. All I could think at that moment was, Mark, I would give all the masking tape in the world if only you could talk to me. The church was packed with Mark's friends. Chuck's sister sang the battle hymn of the public, the pastor said the usual prayers, and the boogler played taps. I was the last one to bless the coffin, and as I stood there, one of the soldiers who acted as a pallbearer came up to me. Were you Mark's math teacher? He said. I nodded, and I continued to stare at the coffin. Mark talked about you a lot, he said. After the funeral, most of Mark's former classmates headed to Chuck's farmhouse for lunch. Mark's mother and father were there, obviously waiting for me. We want to show you something. They found this on Mark when he was killed. We thought you might recognize it. Opening the billfold, he carefully removed 2 worn pieces of notebook paper that had obviously been taped, folded, and refolded many times. I knew without looking that the papers were the ones on which we had listed all the good things of each of Mark's classmates had said about him. Thank you so much for doing that, Mark's mother said. As you can see, Mark treasured it. Well, Mark's classmates started to gather around. Chuck smiled rather sheepishly and said, I still have my list in the top drawer of my desk at home. John's wife said, John asked me to put his in our wedding album. I have mine too, Marilyn said. It's in my diary. Then Vicky, another classmate, reached into her pocketbook, took out her wallet, and showed her worn and frazzled list to the group. I carry this with me all times, Vicky said without batting an eyelash. I think we all saved our lists. That's when I finally sat down and cried. I cried for Mark and for all his friends who would never see him again. What a wonderful story. Isn't that a beautiful idea, is to have all the students write down the positive things they think about their classmates and have a list and then give them the list. I think that's just amazing story. So thanks so much for taking 5 and blessings on your day. I should tell you about this. I had a reconstructive surgery done on my hand and my thumb and on my wrist. So I have a cast on and I hope to get it off this week. So blessings on your day. Thanks for taking 5.